Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 23rd of October. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Canadian Parliament and large parts of Ottawa remain under lockdown following a number of shootings that left a soldier and a gunman dead. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says Washington is prepared to reduce its military presence in Asia if Pyongyang rejoins talks and sticks to its denuclearization commitments. Plus, the United States announces even stricter measures to monitor travelers from Ebola-stricken countries in West Africa. But our top story this morning, one of 3 U.S. citizens detained in North Korea is now back with his family in Ohio after being freed by the communist state earlier this week. North Korea says its leader Kim Jong-un personally ordered Jeffrey Fowle's release following repeated requests from U.S. President Barack Obama. This is a claim, of course, that Washington denies. Paulie starts us off.
Jeffrey Fowle, one of the 3 Americans being held in North Korea, was released Tuesday. Without providing details, the U.S. State Department confirmed that Fowle was transported out of the communist country by a U.S. Air Force passenger jet and appeared to be in good health. He later arrived in his home state of Ohio and was reunited with family early Wednesday. The 56-year-old American had been arrested in April for crimes against the state after leaving a Bible in his hotel. While Washington welcomed Pyongyang's surprise move, it drew attention to the 2 remaining U.S. detainees.
We think this is a positive step, but that does not change the fact that we remain concerned about Kenneth Bay and Matthew Miller.
Washington thanked the Swedish embassy in Pyongyang for helping arrange Fowle's release. A senior South Korean official with knowledge of the matter said the move does not appear to be an outcome of talks between Washington and Pyongyang. But the prospect of dialogue between the 2 foes seems to be budding. Speaking at a forum in Washington Tuesday, U.S. Special Envoy for the 6-party nuclear talks, Sidney Seiler, rejected the widespread view that Washington is insisting on preconditions for restarting nuclear talks. Seiler stressed that the 6-party dialogue would have to be first and foremost about denuclearization, but added that it could be demonstrated by North Korea holding off its current nuclear activities. The U.S. official said Washington is willing to listen to North Korea's list of demands and complaints to encourage them to make the right decisions. Seiler, however, pointed out that the main problem lies with the North's unwillingness to respond. Paul Yee, ARIRANG News.
Now, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has expressed hope for the resumption of denuclearization talks with North Korea, saying that Washington is ready. Speaking in Berlin on Wednesday, Kerry said the U.S. is prepared to reduce its regional military presence if North Korea rejoins talks and sticks to its commitments to denuclearize. On the release of Jeffrey Fowle, the top U.S. diplomat said there was no secretive deal involved in his release. He added that the U.S. is concerned about the remaining American detainees, adding that he hopes Pyongyang will see the benefits of releasing them as soon as possible. And South Korea welcomed North Korea's unexpected move, calling the regime to release 2 other American detainees as well. Now, some experts say this latest development could have a positive effect on inter-Korean relations. Our Connie Kim reports.
While North Korea's surprise move is seen as an attempt to better relations with Washington, some analysts say it could also have implications for inter-Korean ties.
It will be hard to say that this will have an immediate direct impact on inter-Korean ties, but I see this as a show of willingness to improve relations with Washington with flexibility, and in the process, it can have a positive impact on inter-Korean ties.
The 2 Koreas are scheduled to hold another round of high-level talks later this month or in early November. Seoul has proposed to meet on October 30th, but Pyongyang has yet to respond. And the prospects for talks have been clouded by 3 cross-border shootouts in less than 2 weeks. While a Seoul official says it's unlikely for Pyongyang to back out of the talks because it was North Korea's high-level delegation that's agreed to the talks, North Korea watchers don't expect much progress, even if and when the meeting does take place. They say the 2 Koreas will be coming to the discussions with 2 very different agendas and interests. so it may be a long way to go from here. But with Pyongyang lifting one impediment to talks between North Korea and the U.S., it remains to be seen whether the regime will continue with its show of goodwill gesture with Washington as well as Seoul. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Now, North Korea has demanded South Korea take action to prevent a military confrontation between the two countries. In a statement released on Wednesday, the North said there was no reason not to hold a second round of talks if the South takes appropriate measures to prevent action that could spark off a military exchange. The South has proposed to hold the second round of talks next Thursday, but the North has yet to respond to that proposal. Referring to the exchange of fire between the two Koreas early this week, North Korea questioned whether the South truly wants to improve inter-Korean ties. The North also demanded that Seoul stop activists launching anti-Pyongyang leaflets this weekend, calling it an act of war. Korea and China have lashed out against Japan for denying its forced sexual enslavement of women during and before World War II. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said earlier this week that former Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono's admission all the way back in 1993 that the women were coerced into sexual slavery had created a, quote, major problem for Japan. Seoul's Foreign Affairs Ministry says it was disappointed that Japan was countering its previous vow to uphold that statement, the so-called Kono statement. Korean officials say any attempts to deny the history would degrade Japan's credibility. China also stepped in, saying that it wanted Tokyo to make amends over what it called acts against humanity. In response, Suga retreated from his comment and said historians need to decide on whether the women were indeed coerced. Now, turning to the latest on those attacks in Canada, and police in Ottawa are searching for more attackers after a young army corporal was killed and the suspected gunman also shot dead in the Parliament building during several shooting attacks in that city. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
The heart of Ottawa went into lockdown Wednesday after a gunman shot and killed a soldier on guard at the city's war memorial, then stormed into the Parliament building where he exchanged gunfire with police. Canadian authorities have identified the suspect in the shooting as Michael Zihav Bibo, a 32-year-old Canadian national who converted to Islam. Police say the situation remains live and they haven't ruled out the possibility that additional shooters could be on the run. The deceased soldier has been identified as 24-year-old Corporal Nathan Cirillo. 3 others have been hospitalized but are said to be stable. Eyewitnesses say they heard multiple gunshots.
Literally, I was just taking off my jacket to go into caucus. I hear this pop, 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 possibly 10 shots, don't really know. Thought it was dynamite or construction rather than anything else. Suddenly the security guards come rushing down the hallways. Usher is all out to the back of the Parliament buildings.
Chaos took place just before 10 a.m. local time as leaders of Canada's 3 major parties were holding their weekly meetings in the Parliament building. Prime Minister Stephen Harper, who was addressing cabinet at the time, condemned the attack as despicable and said those responsible would have no safe haven. The shootings came a matter of hours after Canada raised its terror threat level from low to medium, following an incident on Monday in which a soldier was killed in a hit-and-run attack by a Muslim convert. No motivation for the attack has been identified yet, but earlier this month, Canada announced plans to join the U.S.-led coalition against Islamic State militants in Iraq. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Well, let's get a check on the other global headlines we're following now with our Eunice Kim at the News Centre. Hello there, Eunice.
Good morning, Mark.
So countries around the world are on very high alert regarding the Ebola contagion concerns that continue, not least of which is the United States. And I understand there have been plans introduced there to keep an eye on travellers coming into the country.
Right. You'll remember yesterday we told you the Department of Homeland Security was requiring all travelers from Ebola hotspot nations, that is Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, to arrive through 5 designated airports for enhanced Ebola screening. Now we're learning that monitoring will follow those passengers home for a period of 21 days, which is, of course, the maximum incubation period for the virus. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said the plan will launch on Monday, initially in 6 states before extending to others. This as the World Health Organization is discussing whether stricter travel rules were needed, particularly in West Africa's border areas, in an emergency committee meeting in Geneva. Now, the group did release new Ebola death figures, which showed that deaths have spiked by 322 over a 5-day period. Sierra Leone's government estimates it's seeing more than 20 Ebola deaths every day in its western regions. A curfew is in place there at a town called Koidu. 2 people were shot dead after a riot was triggered when health officials tried to take a blood sample from an elderly woman. Shifting now to the war against the Islamic State group, Iran's leader has vowed to support neighboring Iraq in its battle against the radical Sunni insurgency. The pledge came as Iranian President Hassan Rouhani hosted Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi on Tuesday. President Rouhani said Iran has supported Baghdad from the first day and will remain on that path until the last day. And according to Iran's official IRNA news agency, that comment was followed by support from the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who said the security of Iran and Iraq were inseparable. The Islamic State group has captured large swaths of territory in Syria and Iraq, including the city of Mosul, threatening to expand into the capital of Baghdad. Meanwhile, in Egypt, a bomb exploded outside the country's most prominent university on Wednesday, the second such explosion near Cairo University in 6 months. Egypt's Interior Ministry said 10 people were wounded, including 6 policemen, after the bomb was apparently detonated following clashes between Islamist students and police. Universities have been a frequent site of violent protests since the military's ouster of Islamist President Mohamed Morsi last year.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 50. The global economic recovery remains beset by downside risks, even all those years after the 2008 global financial crisis. And with signs China's economy might be slowing down as well, finance ministers from across the Asia-Pacific region got together this week to try and coordinate their fiscal policies. Our Sean Lim reports.
21 finance ministers from the Asia-Pacific region gathered in Beijing to coordinate monetary policies in a battle against increasing downside risks to the global economy. And it seems it came at the perfect time. Just a day before the APEC meeting, China announced its slowest quarterly GDP growth rate in 5 years at 7.3%, fanning concerns that the world's second-largest economy is becoming a drag on global growth. However, China's Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli stressed full confidence in the Chinese economy and said performance was still within a reasonable range. Nevertheless, he still called for deeper regional cooperation to stave off the downward pressure being exerted by the world economy.
The Asia-Pacific economic cooperation must effectively shoulder the important mission of promoting regional and global development that features policy coordination, growth linkage, and interest integration.
Korean Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan also called for APEC member states to coordinate their macroeconomic policies in a more cautious and transparent way. At the end of the one-day meeting, the ministers issued a joint statement agreeing on implementing flexible fiscal policies to respond to short-term unevenness in the global economy. And it also said nations should advance structural reforms to spur new sources of growth and jobs.
All sides reiterated that they should implement appropriate microscopic economic policies to support economic growth and create jobs. At the same time, all sides committed to further promoting structural reforms and to take necessary measures to solve bottleneck issues and the weakness of the current economic development, releasing new power for the sustainable economic growth.
With the impact of the global financial crisis still reverberating through world economies, leaders will continue the discussion at the APEC annual summit meeting in November in Beijing. Sean Lim, Arirang News.
Korean importers' use of the Japanese currency to settle deals have dropped to a record low in the third quarter of this year. The Bank of Korea said the yen accounted for less than 4% of all import deals in the July to September period, dropping half a percentage point from the previous quarter. Although the central bank declined to comment on the reason, industry watchers say it shows Korean traders' reluctance to pay with the Japanese yen due to the weakening currency. The US dollar is still by far and away the most favoured currency when settling import deals, accounting for nearly 85% of the total. Now, in its bid to support working mums and dads and hopefully raise the country's really chronically low birth rate, the Korean government has come up with some measures to let office workers strike a more healthy work-family life balance. The Labour Ministry made a pre-announcement of legislation on this Thursday. It says parents of kids under the age of 8 years old can reduce their working hours for up to 2 years if they did not take maternity leave. Currently, they can only work for a reduced shift for 1 year. Now, when the revision is enacted, which could be as early as next July, office workers who apply can choose to work between 15 to 30 hours a week. The latest buzzword in the IT world these days is wearable technology. Now, it's fair to say, though, that smart watches and smart glasses haven't really set the world alight quite yet. This has left analysts wondering whether wearables have become the victim to their own hype in a way, or whether it's still too early and the boom is yet to come. Kwon So-won reports.
There's been a lot of hype about wearable technology, but for most consumers, it's yet to make the leap to must-have gear. However, market watchers believe it's just a matter of time before the boom begins. Leading professional services network PricewaterhouseCoopers in a recent report forecast sales of some 130 million wearable devices between now and 2018. It says 53% of so-called millennials, those between the ages of 18 and 24, are excited about the technology. PwC suggests 6 industries will see the greatest benefits from the rise in wearables. Entertainment and media companies are expected to be the big winners, as the report says, where there's a screen, there's an opportunity. It might not be a revolutionary new genre, but analysts say it improves what's already there by enhancing the fun factor. This factor plays right into the gaming industry, which will go beyond touchscreens and incorporate other senses into the experience. The healthcare sector is also expected to reap benefits by developing more devices for consumers to monitor themselves. Social media, advertising, and retail businesses are also forecast to ride the wearable tech wave for profits. So the forecast seems bright, but the industry does face some obstacles. While the report says 1 in 5 U.S. adults already own a wearable device, it also revealed 1/3 of them didn't use it very often or even at all. Analysts say the biggest challenge the industry faces is convincing consumers their wearable device is something they can't leave home without. Kwon So-won, Arirang News.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with Game 2 of the best-of-5 first-round series between the LG Twins and the NC Dinos, which was finally played after 2 straight rainouts. So let's take a look at the highlights from Masan. Now, of course, leading off in the top of the first inning, Chung Sung-hoon deep to left field. There it goes. A leadoff home run gives the LG Twins the early 1-0 lead. Fast forward to the 4th inning, Brad Snyder with a man on deep to straightaway center, and the LG Twins now take a 3-0 lead. Now stays that way until the 7th inning when Eric Thames with the first pitch he sees gone, and the deficit is cut to 3-1. Next play, Lee Tae-won at bat, and he's got a single to right center here. Scoring is Lee Ho-jun, and it's now 3-2. But despite the late rally here, that's all the scoring for the NC Dinos as LG adds an insurance run in the 9th, take a 2-0 series lead with a 4-2 victory. And staying in baseball, but over to Game 1 of the 2014 World Series between the Kansas City Royals and the San Francisco Giants. Now, Giants off to a great start in Game 1, jumping early against Royals star James Shields as they scored 3 runs in the first inning, including Hunter Pence's 2-run shot. Now, the Giants lineup would score 5 runs off of Shields in his first 3 innings of pitching as the Giants starter Madison Bumgarner has another great postseason game, pitching 7 innings, giving up just 1 run on 3 hits as the Giants take Game 1 7-1 and a 1-0 series lead. And now shifting over to the 2014 Incheon Asian Paralympic Games. After dominating in the bowling competition, South Korea dominated in the team lawn bowling event this time as the nation added 2 gold and 3 silver medals in the team lawn bowling competition on Wednesday. And now with that, we're going to move over to some Wednesday night's KBL action. This time, Jeonju KCC Aegis continues their hot streak, beating Busan KT Sonic Boom 78-74. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the defending champions Ulsan Mobis Phoebus take on Wonju Dongbu Promi. Now a tight game from the start as Mobis takes a slim 18-17 lead after the first quarter before breaking it wide open in the second quarter to take a 40-30 lead going into halftime. Now Mobis, led by Moon Tae-young's 22 points and 10 rebounds, never looked back as they cruised through to win this game 72-61. Now with South Korea's success in volleyball during the Incheon Asian Games, the fans have been flooding the arenas to watch the V-League this season. So let's finish things off with some Wednesday night's V-League action, starting off in the Women's League, where the IBK Altos took on the defending champions GS Kartex for a repeat of last year's championship series. And just a year later, a completely different result as the IBK Altos completely dominate GS Kartex in this match, led by IBK's Destiny Hooker and her 27 points, as IBK takes this match 27-25, 28-26, and 25-22 for a 3-0 lead. And meanwhile, over on the Men's League, Hyundai Capital Skywalkers taking on Uricard Hanse. Oriol Kameo puts up a game-high 20 points, but Hyundai Capital's Moon Sung-min and Liberman Algamez combined for 34 points as Hyundai Capital sweeps through 3-0. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, most parts of the nation woke up to the chilliest morning of the season, and according to the traditional East Asian calendars, today is Sanggang, the last solar term in the autumn, and it indicates the appearance of frost and descent of temperature. But unlike chilly morning, the highs will rise rapidly as the day goes on under lots of autumn sun, and daytime highs will be similar to yesterday, as the daily highs here in the capital will rise to 19, while Daegu and Busan will be topping out at 20, and Gwangju will climb to 21 later in the day. Now on to other regions. Jeju Island will be making to 18, while Daejeon and Dokdo should see highs of 19 and 16 respectively. And it seems like we'll have delightful late autumn weather for the time being, with the highs hovering in the 20, but the morning lows could be chilly at times, so do notice the big temperature gaps and dress accordingly to avoid catching a cold. But that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now. We'll be back with another newscast at noon Korea time in about 90 minutes. Until then, goodbye.